Like I said before, thank you for everyone joining us tonight to have a little introduction into UI kits and then into Shipwright, the one that we built. We'll kind of be doing some stuff in there and kind of showing how we can expand a UI kit. Like I said before, my name was Billy Sweetman, design lead here at Headway. I help run our design team, help build out our design systems, our UI kits, and kind of work with a really great group of designers and developers. And we're excited to share our knowledge with what we know and hopefully answer some questions here at the end of the night. Like Jacob said before, make sure you like and subscribe our YouTube channel. We are recording this, so this will be available later this week, so everyone will be able to watch this at their own pace. On YouTube, make sure you turn on the alert if you want to get notifications about new videos that we post up. We do post up quite a bit of videos from our other meetups as well. And then also feel free to sign up for our newsletter. We also communicate when events are coming up through there as well. So let's dive into it. So really kind of rudimentary, but what is a UI kit and where do we, and how do we start thinking about it? So UI kits really they're a collection of components in a design tool that can be leveraged to build out designs. And these are pre-built components. They can be really the fundamental foundation building blocks of a design system. They also could be something that you just pull to download to get some device components, like a keyboard for an iOS app or a specific design style, like if you're using a material UI library. UI kits are readily available online. They've been around for a long time. Some of the first ones were Photoshop UI kits, but really now they've gotten very advanced with the new tools and libraries that are out there and all the design tools, and they've become very dynamic. And so there's a lot more involved with UI kits. They're very versatile. They'll help you build out designs faster. They'll help you set standards. They'll do a lot of the things that a design system does. They're part of it, and they'll help set that foundation, like I said, and they'll help keep that consistency, and they'll help you build things out a lot faster, especially in sprawling organizations or if you just want to keep everything on the same page. So the first question everyone asks is, well, should I go run off and build my own? I'm a big advocate at Headway, a big advocate of building out UI kits, building out design systems. Those UI kits, just getting experience building them will help you understand the inner workings of UI kits. And they'll really help you see how to set things up and make those customizations, especially if you're downloading one online from somewhere else that might be very robust. And you can get kind of lost in the weeds a little bit. Trying to build your own will help get those sort of reps in and get you comfortable doing that. However, this isn't for everybody. Not everyone has time to do this. It might not be something that you have a big desire to do. And then it also might not make sense if you're building an app and it's strictly using material UI. You might not need a UI kit or build your own UI kit. You might be able to find one, customize what you need to customize, but everything else can be used right out of the box. So they're really a great time-saving tool and a great education tool for students who are trying to figure out how to get into these design tools and build things. So then the next question is, where do I get one? So we're primarily a Figma house, so we're going to mostly be talking about Figma and where we would get Figma UI kits that are compatible with Figma. But that doesn't mean that there isn't UI kits that are out for Sketch still. There's UI kits out for Adobe XD. There's UI kits still. Photoshop and Illustrator has UI kits. I don't want to assume that those aren't used as much, but they're still out there. Just something that we don't do a lot. So, but you can find UI kit links in Pinterest. I've seen them on Instagram. So you can find UI kits kind of all over the place. But we'll be talking a lot about the Figma community and where we will go get those from that. So we are going to go into Figma. We're going to spend a lot of time in Figma and kind of showing where a lot of this stuff lives, where we can get access to it, and then we'll build a couple of things out. Also, if anyone has any questions, I know I said at the end we'll do questions, but feel free to ask questions along the way, and Jacob or Andrew will flag me or say something, and we can answer it as we're kind of going through things. So, all right, off to Figma. So if you do have Figma installed, the desktop app that's in here right now, I'm on a personal account. So it is the free account that everyone has access to. You will see Communities Beta up here. Communities Beta is something they recently launched that has really empowered the community to build things out and upload those for everyone else to use. These are all free to use. You can use them on all kinds of different projects, and it's really robust. There's everything from design systems, wireframes for doing user flows, illustrations, typography styles, mobile app layouts, icons. There's a lot of stuff in here. They have a UI kit section, which is really nice when you're looking for different types of UI kits in here. They have everything from, you can see here, we have some charts and infographics. They have specific design systems for material or for different front-end libraries. Here you can see a material design styled UI kit. We can see there's iOS app icon generator that'll help you do that, and just different UI kits in here. When you go to select one, so for example, let's search, we're going to look for iOS. If you want to search, you can search for different things, and you can see the items if they're from the search results here. You'll have different files. You can also look into plugins as well, but we're going to stick mostly in files here. And when you find something that you like, you can open it up, take a look at it. And then you can see sort of what the files in it. So when you're looking at your different UI kit options, one of the most important things to do right off the bat is to do sort of an audit. Does that UI kit complete or accomplish the needs that you have for your project? So here, if we were doing just some iOS 14 widget designs, we could easily pull this one into our library, and you can see they've got templates for dark mode and light mode, and it's easily able to adjust all of these in here. So that's kind of a nice kit. We could do that if we were doing a widget kit. We have some iOS icons for different features. We also have one that I would say is versatile for any project is iOS browser bars. So this is something that you could pull into your file. In fact, we're actually going to pull it down so we can duplicate this. And this will pull into our draft folder. And now we have access to all these great iOS, our iPhone 8, iPhone X, browser headers, and footers for Safari. So we're building out a design, we can anchor those Safari elements in there. Like I said, it pulls it down into our drafts folder here. So these are other ones that I've pulled down before. So it'll put it in drafts folder. It's not in an actual project yet, but we have access now to all of these, and these are my local copies, so I can change and edit those however I want. If I was working in the team, if I was in the Figma team structure or a Figma like a paid account, I could even turn these into libraries and start to use those in my design system. So like, for example, this iOS browser kit, we could bring this into the Headway organization, flag it as a library, and then everyone would have access to those iOS browser UI kit components, and we don't have to worry about building those out for every single design. Like I said before, when you're looking to get a UI kit, you want to spend some time doing some auditing. The little preview is nice. I like to download them and actually open them up and take a look on the inside. Some of the big things I look for when auditing UI kits is just naming convention. Do they have the elements that I expect I'll need? How robust are they? So this one, there's a link to a full version. So this might be a preview of a UI kit, and then there's a paid version that I could have access to and get that. So this might be something that I might not necessarily use on like a personal project, but if I audit it and I'm looking and I like the way everything's set up, I'm checking how their text styles and color styles are laid out, and I like it, I might go off and buy this one. Or if you're working with sort of a front-end library or something like Tailwind CSS UI, and you have a project that's starting with that, this might be something that you want to start with as well. So while you're doing the audit here, you can see they have a lot of their predefined set things, and your developers might love you if you're using all of these predefined components that belong with Tailwind, and they're using Tailwind, and then you can use this sort of as that foundation when you're building out your designs or your design system. So just kind of looking through, seeing how everything's structured in here, and that's kind of what I'm looking for, is how are things set up. I like that they're using frames for here, so everything will be structured in here nicely. So we pull out different components. We got the whole list here. And Figma just updated their little instance swap menu so that you can actually see all the little glyphs right in there with the icons, which is nice. Some other things when I'm looking for UI kits, structure, naming convention, do they have all the components that I need? Also, like, is there activity? Are there updates? Have they been rated? So if we go into the community again and go to design systems and look at some of these bigger ones. So here's like a iOS UI kit. Just kind of seeing like how many people have downloaded it, how many favorites are there, how many pages might be in here. So here's just 2 pages. Just the robustness of a UI kit is something to look forward. And also, are there any updates? So sometimes when a UI kit gets updated, there'll be an update card in there, and you'll see the notes from the updated UI kit. I know that's something that we do on ours. But we want to make sure that if it's not fully complete, are more components coming, are more modules and pieces and different elements going to be added, or is this kind of where it lives and I can be free to just customize it and kind of go with it the way I want to. So we have our UI kit, and that's called Shipwright UI kit, and this is actually a foundational piece for all of our design systems, and we've actually been building onto it quite a bit. So this is the one that we are going to be working with the most. Once you download a UI kit and it's dropped into your drafts, you can bring it and just drag it into a project. And you see I have 2 of these in here now. So we can just drop that in here, and let's delete this one. And that'll bring it into your project. So if I was starting a project and I was working on this and I was getting this set up for, let's say, my design team to be working and building things, I might drop it into a project where it's just myself in there. I can go in and edit, make the changes that I want, or we can discuss it together as a group and go and make those changes. But you got to drag it from your draft so everyone can have access to it. And then in here, obviously, if I was in a paid account, the project settings, whoever has access to it to have visibility into it as well. One caveat with UI kits. Now, we're big believers of multi-tiered design systems, so we kind of abstract our UI kits out a little bit. We don't, this won't necessarily be abstracted out because there isn't a way for, at least not at the moment and not without a plugin, there isn't a way for Figma to sort of manage all the links that can happen. So one thing that we may normally do on a project is maybe take things like color and type styles and actually have those in a different file from our components. But you'll notice that all the UI kits, everything comes in together as sort of that group. So not a lot of things are abstracted out that way right away. And that is something that would take a little bit of time to get up and running with if you're converting a UI kit to do that. So the way that we have our UI kit structured is sort of the top are sort of our administrative pages, cover. We've got the release notes. So we've had 2 releases so far for this kit out there. We've included a design system management system. So this is just components that we use to help communicate changes in our design systems. We have the component sheet for those as well. Then we have the actual components. So the covers that go on the front So not here because this is for advertising purposes. When you're putting something on the community, you want a little bit more of an advertising graphic to be up there. But in our actual working files, which you can see as like this presentation in Wisconsin UX, we would have that cover component out there. So that's kind of what these are, frame overlays, and then frame titles that we might use to place around our design system and kind of communicate different changes and the status of different components. And then we've also included a bunch of generated face images and some fake brand logos and stuff like that. So this is components that we use that might normally not be in a UI kit that we have on a project, but stuff so we can easily swap out photos without having to go and use a plugin, so we can have some sort of consistency if we need to make sure we're tracking a profile photo all the way through a prototype. So then the way that our UI kit is structured is we follow the atomic design system. So we build things as their smallest components as atoms, and we sort of build up layered components into molecules and organisms, and then finally templates. So that's kind of how these are laid out. In what's kind of unique in the way we laid out the Shipwright UI kit is atoms. The actual building blocks are all on the same page as the molecules. So we will actually have little helper elements talking about, for example, let me go over to buttons real quick. All the button constructors are living on top of the button elements here. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me do, no, that's fine. So, so then if I were to download this, I would start auditing it through. I would check out, you know, like, do they have grids set up? How are the type styles set up? So I can see I have my displays, my headings, my body, different button labels, input styles, all the different color styles. I can see there's a light theme and a dark theme in here, alerts, and I have different layer styles and different grids. So those are sort of the styles that are stored sort of in the Figma style library that's in every file. And then what I would also do is start looking through the components and seeing what I have available to me. So here we have color styles for each theme, and we have some accents and some alerts, some cards. There's some icons included in the kit. I can see we have different button styles in here. We have some larger buttons, different button states, some auto layout buttons in here. I can see the inputs. I'm actually going to turn grids off so everyone else can see the inputs. I can see we have different input styles here, and I can start to see and looking in here how some of these might be created. So I can see, this is actually using another input, and so there's some nested components. So once I start seeing some nested components, I can start to tell like, all right, this might be a pretty complicated or sophisticated UI kit. So it might be a little bit of a learning curve when I need to go in there and make some adjustments and changes. So this looks pretty good. It doesn't have everything I want. I know.
Real quick, Billy.
Yep.
Gina asked how to add the sample UI kit into the draft from Community.
Oh, yep. Yeah, so in Community, let's, if I can, you're not gonna let me type ship. Yeah, so if you just click on the actual card, you can hit this duplicate, and this will add it to your draft folder. So it actually opens it up, so then it pulls it down. But now this one will be in my draft folder. So this one's living in draft right now, and the other one's local to my file. So hopefully that answered your question. It doesn't, you have to like click into drafts to see it. So you can see I pulled down another copy. And if I were to, let me move Zoom real quick, find a new project. Then I would just drag that to this project here. And so now I have one Tailwind CSS in this demo project, and that's how I could drag it from my draft. Let me close this one out so I don't get confused. Actually, let's close the rest of these out. Yeah, so I would start looking through the different components. Because this is built out following atomic design, I'm going to look at some more of the more complicated components. So I'll take a look and see what kind of card presets there are, nav presets, different header presets that might be in there. Now, with UI kits, the more complicated components get, the more they might not be necessarily what you need for your project. So feel free when you download a UI kit to delete things out that you don't feel you need, because you want to make sure that you're customizing it for what best fits you and your team. So for example, if this is a really great inbox component, but if we're not building out a mail tool, or if we're not building a chat tool right away, this might be a component that I might just delete out. Or if you are doing a library, you can just add a period to the front, and then it doesn't get published up to the library. And that's a way to hide things from other files. So that's kind of a neat little tip if you don't want to delete stuff out and you kind of want to save it for later. The next thing I might check is the templates. So I can see we've got some desktop templates in here. And then I can see there's a couple of mobile templates in here, which looks great. I can see there's a keyboard that was brought in already. So if I click and see where that keyboard asset is, so that's living here in this organisms folder. So that's kind of cool that that's included. What I could do also is I could have, there is a UI kit that just has all the different iOS keyboards. So I could have that as a different library and then pull that in here if I wanted to. So that could be sourced actually somewhere else. Is kind of neat. And then last one is the archive folder, which there's nothing in this page, but this might be where if I don't want anybody to use anything or it's an old component, I might move an item here and store that. We include it as a default page, but doesn't mean you have to have it in there. So that's kind of what I would do going through the process of auditing a UI kit. And then I would, on the side, I'd be keeping track of things that I might want to add to it and start to build out that repository of changes, build out that list of things that I want to add. So a couple of things with this UI kit that I noticed that I want to add, some free work time, I guess, is like we have some alerts here, which is awesome. And we've got 3 alert colors here. But I know like Google and Material UI, which is something that we use as a foundational level on the development side a lot, has that 4th info alert. So that might be something that I want to build out and add. I might also want to, something that I've known a lot that we start doing a lot is we'll need bold versions, a lot of these. So I was like, all right, well, we can add a bold header element. So I could do that. And add that. And then I might want to change something on the input. So we're going to go ahead and start adding those components from the list that I just made while I was going through the audit. And we'll kind of see how we can go and make sure that everything that we have fits in correctly in the UI kit and sort of unpack elements as we're building that stuff out. All right, cool. So I'm going to select this color frame here and see how everything's set up in here. I can see we have a building blocks as a locked element. We have this guide element above. We have the different labels here, and then we kind of just have the colors here organized that way. So one thing I might do is I might grab all of these and just put those into a little group and say light theme colors. Now this isn't going to change the structure of my components at all. Groups don't adjust the hierarchy, so you can easily keep things grouped like that. This is just sort of for management and keeping the folder structure on the side clean. Or I won't say clean, just the way that I like to do it. So we'll call this accents. And then here we've got my alerts. All right, now that I've kind of cleaned up this thing the way I want to, I'm also going to move this into the building blocks because I don't want to adjust that and I don't want to break that. So I kind of want to leave that up there. I know I could copy that down to get these components for the UI kit, sort of the display, but I'll probably just copy from another component to do that. So one thing that color styles don't need to be displayed this way at all. Color styles live, you can see the local styles on the side. They live here and they don't need to be displayed like this. However, when dev team or you're working with clients or you're working with the team and you're trying to look at things, it's nice to have all the colors pulled out this way. One big thing for us was making sure that we'd have the hex code on here as well, and then that these were labeled similar to what the dev team was being used, so they don't have to go into the inspect menu and try to figure out, all right, alert warning, and then here's the hex code, and then some of the changes here. Wow, this is a lot nicer than what it used to be with the newest Figma update. It's still easier just to kind of look around while you're driving around and having that conversation and just see it here without having that sort of secondary click. So just kind of a usability thing that that we think is important. So I can see, I'm gonna just go ahead and option drag this one down here. So option drag allows you to copy and drag a component. And if that is a child component, it will automatically duplicate out that child component. And we are going to call this info.
One question while you're doing that, Billy.
Yep.
Is this set up in the 8-point grid system?
Yes, everything is set up in a loose 8-point grid system for the different components and elements. The actual layout of the UI kit looks like it is too. So, so for here, I might want to, so I'm gonna go ahead and add that info color because I know that's something that we've actually had to do while we're updating the UI kit. So here, I can't just go and change this color here because this is the actual color style that's on there. This stroke is just an extra flourish that I'm not worried too much about. So if I were to go and change this alert warning, it's actually going to change this yellow here, and I'll just kind of, since this is local, and so you see I'm actually changing that whole color style there. So I don't want to do that. I actually want to make that new alert. So I'm going to break this apart. And in Material UI, alert's sort of a bluish color. I know we have that accent, so maybe we'll go with like a dark blue for info. Then I'm going to hit my color styles, and then I want to double check how some of these are named. So I can see there's actually some other alert colors as well that aren't displayed here. So that might be something I want to display out here as well. But for now, I'm just going to add this info. So it's alert/info. So I'll hit this plus sign to create this style, and we'll go alert/info. All right, now we have this new info color. I've got it on here as well. And now the other thing that I'll want to do, just to be a good steward of my UI kit and making sure that everyone has the right information, is I want to go in and adjust these two values. And you can get those right in here. So there's the hex, RGB, CSS, HSL, and HSP values. So you can actually get those here. I don't think I can just copy those out. So we're just going to say, I'm going to be a not good steward. And I'm going to put look it up. So I can't copy them all at once. So, but that's how I would maybe expand out the color. So now when I go to my style here, I can see that my UI kit has that, has been added. And I notice it's down here. So I'm actually going to drag it up so it fits in line with everything else. Another thing that I might want to do is we fall into this a lot, having to do different type styles. So right now, if I go and create a frame down here and I bring this heading 1 in, and I just type in, and I copy and paste this into it here. Right now, my whole text style is from that one style, and I can't grab, I mean, I could grab some of this and then do bold if I want to do inline bolding, but sometimes we need to have the, oh, excuse me, let me get a drink of water real quick. sometimes we need to have that additional bold style, and we might not have that necessarily. So what I would want to do there is I want to expand out this heading, and then for here, I might, drag one out here. That's another where I'm going to break it apart. It's going to be set to regular, so I'm going to say heading 1 bold. And then here, same as like I did with the color style, I'm going to double check and it'll have headings /H1. And so here, I'm going to have to make 2 changes because I want to keep this as organized as possible. So I'm going to create this style and type in headings /H1/bold, just so I have access to that in the structure. And what that did now is created a additional item down here of heading /H1 bold. But now I want to bring this heading down there as well. So I'm going to go here, take a look at this, and this would be regular. And I will actually edit this to be regular. Now, I wouldn't go in and do this with every single type style because otherwise, I mean, basically you've recreated, you'll have all these type styles kind of all over the place. But if it's something that's necessary to the design, it's necessary to making sure we have those notes for developers, I would go in and add those as needed. And so now we can have our headings over here that are regular, and then maybe headings bold here, or maybe even structure it down underneath here. So one thing, so like, let's say I want to have this heading structured in here. So I've got my heading 1, and this is heading 7, but we're going to call this heading 1 - bold in here. And then I'm going to grab all of these headings, and I'm just going to put them in a group real quick for quick cleanup. I'm going to do an auto layout for quick cleanup. Go over there. And we will do 16 apart, and that way I don't have to worry about them being lined up all over the place. So now I've got my heading group here. So yeah, I can easily expand out the colors. I can easily expand out type styles. But what about like the actual components? And we need to start looking at like the nested components into the more complicated things in the UI kit. So one of the things with this UI kit is there's all these different inputs in here, and I can start to see how these actually work. So if I look at an input, and I'll copy one down here into a space to play with, which is sort of how I'll audit a lot of UI kits, is I'll kind of start bringing components in, see what happens when I stretch. Okay, that looks good. Yeah, that looks good. I'll look into, oh, okay, so we have a field that's in there, and then we have a with button. Oh, that's a drop-down cell. All right, we have an icon on the left, icon left labeled, so it adds a little background, icon right. Okay, so then I can start to extrapolate how this is actually being built out and constructed. And that looks pretty good to me. But one thing that I'll need a lot of times is none of these, they don't seem to have any labels. We have the actual labels for the UI kit structure, but the input itself doesn't have a label. And I personally like to have the label on top of my UI kit or my input component, so I don't have to worry about going and building that out from scratch every single time in a design. So what I'm going to go is look at the different constructor elements. So I see we have the input field, we have the background of the input. Looks like we have a field label, so there's a label atom that I can use. We have this indicator as well, and we got some different field types here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this label here. I'm also going to option drag that down, and we're going to expand this out. Please don't scale. There we go. And then we'll just take default and we'll set it up that way. So here I've got my 2 children objects. I'm going to make sure they're aligned properly. We're going to do 8. We're going to cheat on our loose 8-point grid, and we're going to go 4 just to bring it in a little bit closer. And then we are going to group that and then frame that selection, and we'll call this light simple input / text field with label. Kind of a long name, but now we've got a component that's got the label on it. If I want to, let's get rid of this group in here. Just make sure that all our constraints are set up right. This looks like it's scaling appropriately. What I might want to do is just stretch this out all the way here. We're not using auto layout on this, so I'm not too worried about setting up some of those additional constraints. I'll make sure this is set to left and right and top. That way I can use it for an input. Oh, we want left and right, top and bottom. That way if I need a longer input field, I could. So this is set to scale down. So this is something I might want to change on that other component. So that hangs around up the top and that scales accordingly. All right, so that's the way I might start to expand out this UI kit to have input field with a label on it. Now, the way we set up Shipwright is it's set up to have these different, so I can have my input default, and I can go to the other inputs and I can just kind of drop those in, which is pretty nice if I wanted sort of this omni input. Well, maybe not text area, but sort of this omni input, the single input that I can drop anywhere, and then I can change it to whatever input I want. However, sometimes we like to unpack those, sort of like we did up here, and have those different variety of components available from when the dev team is looking at it, or we're just kind of looking at what's available to us and kind of have everything laid out that way, instead of it being so hidden and nested underneath this single component. So one way that we could do this is, I'm going to set this back to just default, is I could take this component, I can drag it over, make the adjustment here, and then turn this child component into a component that's like text field with the label, and this would be search with label. And that's one way to do it, which is nice because if I make any structural changes to this, for example, let's say we're going to change this. This is probably going to break because it's not set to auto layout. But if I set this, this will all adjust, and now I'm doing everything at this structural template level. But the way we kind of abstracted this out in the atomic system is that all those components are up here, and I can make those changes here. I don't need to build a templated out piece like this. So we'll kind of undo that. So probably what I would end up doing with a kit like this is I would actually, where is my ID? Oh, that's right. Let's undo all of that. And then I'm going to detach this instant, the child instant, so that the two children in it aren't nested that extra level. So it's just easier for us to manage that. So this might be like search with label. And so now I have both of those. When we're going through and making these sort of updates, we manage all of our UI kit / design system updates in a tool called Asana. And so that's the way we kind of manage sort of this process. So once, like I said before, once I've identified and audited a UI kit and I said, all right, here's the things that we need to add to it. That might be one list of like components that we need to build out. But then there's another list that's like, here are the things that we need to customize. So we need to make sure that these things are changed and they match maybe the brand or the style ahead of time. So this might be adding, but like the customization might be another person's job. So, or another person doing that while somebody else is adding components. And that's one of the really nice things about the Figma plug and play is we're able to do that at the same time. I don't have to, or multiplayer, not plug and play, the multiplayer. So I don't have to worry about somebody else having access to the file. They can just go in here and do this. So I might be doing this and building out those new components and making sure that I have everything that we need, while somebody else might be going in and adjusting all of our color styles here. So we already have sort of the Headway teal here. The second accent for Headway is, well, I could just take one of my other colors that they give you by default for Figma, but I could start to adjust this and be like, well, we're not going to do teal anymore. We're going to be festive for Halloween, and we're going to add like this burnt orange, and that's going to be a new brand color, and I could update everything accordingly. And then everything else will start to change accordingly. So everything that was using that, including the tints here, with the tint adjusting that would adjust dynamically. You can see the stroke values adjusting. So somebody can be building out components while somebody else is adding those different colors and styles. Some other things that I might start to think about with the UI kit is, like I said before, we had some of those elements in the organisms that are those nice to have. So sort of these mobile elements here. So this keyboard, we have a little web header here, but I downloaded that other kit as well that had that stuff in there.
Hey, Billy, sorry,
Yep.
before you move on, there's a question here about managing inputs.
Yep.
Just wanted to capture that before we move on. How would you manage inputs that have feedback info such as error strokes and text warnings, i.e. would you have a simple override for the stroke, or would you build out the error states also as components?
So what we normally do is we'll build out the error states as components. So we might have input. So here we have like the field highlighting red for an error state. We might have different helper text that might be red as well. So this is just the raw component that we would adjust. But the way we think about inputs normally is an input is 3 components. It's the, well, it's more than 3, but it's got 3 main structural elements. It's the label, the field, and then the helper text that might go underneath it. And each one of those can have can be a component and have multiple variations of that component. So for example, this default field, we might also have a, this might be default or inactive or active. We might have an inactive state that we can see over here. So we might have this helper text, which this helper text component is here. So we have the error message, we have helper text with a small icon, helper text with a small icon, or action. So that's kind of how we would build that out. So hopefully that answered your question about inputs. And we'll kind of do that for everything. Even in the buttons, we'll build out those different button states and make sure that those are available. And even with our selectors, so like here, checkbox or radial buttons, we might have different a different input field or different label element that might be active, inactive, selected, not selected, or active and selected. So we can kind of get all those combinations as we need. So stuff that we're definitely bringing into Shipwright as we're sort of building out more components. We'll be having a lot more of that stuff in here and available. So.
One thing on the inputs that I just wanted to call out is since you're using the same text layer from above and you're placing that into the different input types, just like the actual input text, you can swap different styles, and since they're using the same text, it'll keep those same values. So you get some efficiencies there when you're switching and changing from certain states or working on different hover states or interactions you want. It'll keep the same text and labels for you because you're using the same elements to build them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just make sure that all your elements are the same layer names, and it should automatically pick those things up. Like we were talking about sort of the components that might be added for mobile or desktop here. So here we have keyboards elements that were brought in, and we have those in our sort of organisms folder, which is really cool that those are included. However, like I said before, if this is a paid account, I might download another library, and I don't think I can do this on a free account, but we're gonna go and try. But what I would do here is, maybe I can. Nope. So on our actual Headway account, we would create a library of these components and then bring those in through the linked library into our UI kit. And that's how you can start to see that abstracted, multi-layered design system / UI kit get built out, because you could have like different mobile components, different web browser components, often different files that are managed independently of where your UI kit is and even where your designs are being built. But one thing that is kind of neat that Figma allows is just quick copy and paste for things over. So for example, if I wanted all of these in our UI kit, not that I wouldn't put these in here for our own publication because we didn't make these, but if I was working on a project and I just needed a bunch of mobile components in here, I would drop all of these in here. And then for the most part, it looks like everything carried over as a component. However, it loses all the children instances because I'm not a paid library. So all those children components get lost in the shuffle. So that's kind of a downside from copying and pasting things over from other files. So just something to be aware about, especially if you're a student or you're just learning in Figma and you don't have a paid account, just something to be to watch. However, if you bring everything in, I didn't test this, so it might not actually work. If you bring everything in, it will keep the links. So just something to think about when you're bringing that stuff in. So if I was going to pull some components into my UI kit and I wanted to expand it out for my team, and we're pulling in, let's say, this mobile set here, I would probably name this frame to be iOS browser. I'd say UI browser elements. And leave that in here. And then I would take a look and see, does this sort of fit what sort of our naming conventions that we've established as a team and how we think or how we would expect things to be named on our elements. I will also change this to, nope, to that color. So these are all named in these different folders, which is great, and we have the different elements. So I'd probably leave these the name. What I would we'll probably keep Safari in there. The only thing that we might change is it depends if we have multiple web browsers in. So if I brought in like a Chrome, a Firefox, a DuckDuckGo library as well, I might do iPhone 8 first, and then the different libraries, just depending on how I set up other kits or how I had other elements in here. For example, these keyboards. I might bring those keyboards in, and you'll see here it's device first, then orientation, is it portrait or landscape, and then the type. So I would probably continue. These I don't have to worry about orientation too much. The footer I might have to. So I would probably name those device first, what type of web browser they are, light or dark mode, and then the actual component, or you could go component and then light or dark mode if you wanted those quick toggles. So that's the way you can pull that stuff in from other files and bring those in to your file and start to expand out your UI kit. This helps a lot when, like I said, when you're starting to build out those foundational, like let's say you're doing a material UI project and you needed some specific material UI components from a different library. So I'm just going to go grab sort of this simple component here, which looks like was built on another one. All right, so this looks like it's from a more complicated component, but I'm going to bring this into my UI kit here, and we'll just bring it down here. And so if this is something I'm building an Android app, and we're going to have this bottom footer with the action button in the center and a menu on the side. And I'm going to start unpacking this and building it out, making sure that it's following it's got our colors that we want in there, and it start using our UI kit components. Oh, not that one. So we'll want to use maybe this. And we want to make sure that when you bring stuff in, we're making sure that everything is using our components, and we don't want things that are like maybe hanging over from other files, because if somebody goes, the expectation that gets built with your team is that everything is set up to go and easily changeable, and sort of like your UI kit and your design system sort of becomes a service for the design team where they just have these components and they know how they work and they have expectations about them. So just making sure that you spend the time to change the things that you need to, and make sure that it has all the pieces in there that they might expect. So for here, I'm probably even going to bring in different components that we already have. And if I was going to get real crazy, I would probably even take these two things, bring them out here, turn that into a component, and then bring the child component in. And doing this kind of fast, so and then I would start grabbing in some of our other icons that we have, just to make sure that they're all linked up, even if they're slightly different, just to make sure that they're linked up and good to go. Now, this is only because I'm bringing in this other component from a UI kit, and I want to make sure that we have those sort of pixel perfect material UI pieces and bring those in. If you were bringing in a full library to start out with, you wouldn't have to go through this process. You could just make those changes to that library yourself and have those things ready to go. All right, cool. Last thing, like I said before, that we probably want to think about is like, what are sort of the larger templates and larger components that are coming in with your UI kit? To be honest, a lot of these are great to show how the components can work and how they get put together. But for the most part, if I were to download a UI kit, I'd probably just delete out most templates. Because whatever I'm building is probably going to be different than the examples that are there for the sake of example. So these are cool to kind of show us how stuff can be built out. We can sort of see how the constraints are built out, and we can check out those adjustments. But if I were to be building something out, or I was starting with a UI kit that I downloaded, or a UI kit that that we start to put together, I personally probably get rid of the templates, unless there's something that I really, really want to use, like a specific material or iOS style component that we definitely didn't want to change or was already in our system. So, all right, cool. So I hope that gave everyone a little bit of an introduction into UI kits, where you can get them on the Figma community, how to sort of expand them and edit them, and how they would work when they're locally. I know we talked a little bit about linking those different libraries together. We have 2 talks already out there on YouTube going over design systems, and we talk a lot about linked libraries and how that works together. So that's definitely something to recommend checking out to get a little bit more sort of the next level from UI kits, is how do you turn these into design systems, and what are the things you need to think about there. But just want to open it up to questions, and really any Figma questions, any UI questions, anything that we can demo here with the time we have remaining.
Yeah, so we'll start off. We have a few queued up. If you have some more, feel free to get them into the Q&A section, but we'll start with one here. Are your release notes on your release notes page created dynamically, or do you need to add these manually?
We add them manually. So this actually, if you go on our website, this will show up on the website, because we actually link to this frame. But we type those up manually. So like I said, we keep track of everything in Asana. So as we get things done, we know, like, all right, we're cutting the next release, we're going to push it live. Here's the components that are out there, and we know what we want to adjust, or what has been adjusted, and we'll type that up.
Yeah, and usually if we're releasing this to, I mean, obviously this is for public consumption for any designer to come and grab it, but if we're releasing new components or patterns to a team, you'd likely have a handoff meeting. You would have, as Billy mentioned, something in Asana, and depending on how your company handles integrating new front-end assets, you know, who's taking this, you'd probably have a handoff process with the development team. And you know, I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, Billy, about working with Storybook and how we take some of our components forward.
Yeah, for sure. So like, yeah, if we're working with the development team and they're building out these individual components, we might build out, like early on in the project, we might build out a component, all the stats, or different states. And we'll have that sort of ready to go, and we'll sit down with the dev team and kind of work through it with them a little bit. They'll have a task that's ready to create this. We'll have the Figma notes in there. We might write some requirements if something doesn't get captured in the static screens. Otherwise, we'll just kind of talk with the dev team, and then they'll build it out in Storybook. So we can view it and kind of click around and see how it functions to make sure it feels good. And then they can also link into, do a live embed of a Figma frame, so they can take that frame, embed the Figma file. So if the Figma files update, they can see it. But we try to be really intentional when we're building out the design system to say, hey, dev team, these are all the components that changed. Here's the list of those, and here's what's ready to go. What you can do is when you're making those changes, before you push them live, I can't do it here because I don't have access to it, but before you hit this publish button, just make sure when you hit publish, you'll keep a list of everything that's changed, and you can kind of go through there and do an audit to make sure you've captured all that for your team.
Thanks, Billy. So the next one here, can you talk a little bit about contribution models in Figma and how you set up your design system team to manage and release updates? It's kind of a little bit what Billy talked about, but do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so depending on how the team is structured, I'd say like, let's say we have a two designer design team, and we're building out a design system from scratch. We might break it out into different, I want to say like almost verticals. All right, I'm going to go worry about the atoms and molecules, and I'm going to go get all those core components done. And then someone else, the other designer, might go worry about the organisms, building out more of the templated pages, worry about the actual designed elements that we need. If it's a really big project, we might have designers working on like an entire different UI kit that is being ingested into this UI kit. So like one project, we built out a data viz library. And there's a designer whose sole responsibility was working on the data viz components so that I could pull them into another design system, another UI kit, and have access to them. So we were constant communication to make sure we were talking back and forth. And that's where we started to realize we should abstract things out like colors, so he could leverage the same colors that I was, and we didn't have to have two sets of colors. If we were working sort of like on a sort of smaller UI kit, we might break out into like, all right, I got buttons and inputs, drop-down selectors. We might get down to that level. It really kind of depends on timeline, team size, and just making sure that everything's communicated out really well together of how we might divvy it up, but it's really project specific. So there's not really like a silver bullet for the way we do it, but we just try to be as dynamic as possible. And at the end of the day, we just hope that we have the nicest notes for the dev team to go build the live version of the design system.
Yeah, I would just add to that on some larger teams that we've worked with. What gets into the UI kit initially is usually like a team effort, and there's a whole, I think in the previous session, Billy, you talked a little bit more about design systems and management, and there's a couple questions here related to that. But as your system is in place and built out, you'll have, you don't want to constrain your product to only what's in the system, and so you'll have new ideas prop up, and then recommend. There's a few different models that you could manage your design system by, whether that's an overlord model where somebody's making that decision, or more of a kind of group model that has cross-functional team but you could have basically a touch point every sprint or every sprint review to essentially say, hey, has something changed about the product or what we're prototyping that we want to then roll in and make it available to other designers in the UI kit, and make sure dev gets it into an NPM package or something more scalable if you're using more micro front ends.
Yeah, and if you have a team that's just building the design system in the UI kit as like a service for other designers, there's definitely like just making sure that we're communicating back and forth when new things are built, sort of not in the UI kit, and they need to be promoted up to the UI kit, or as a team, like Andrew said, if it's everyone contributing, sort of a federated team model, making sure that we're just communicating really well when things need to be promoted up and become part of the core UI kit or design system.
Another question here. Do you produce design tokens as an artifact of your design system? And if so, can you speak a bit about the way you approached it and how you developed the taxonomy for it?
Yeah, so we're right now, one of the things that it's actually on our list to take Shipwright and actually add out a whole different page just called tokens. So it'll be before our atoms and molecules, and we're actually going to remove type out of there. We're going to add spacers out of there. Colors will be in there for tokens. And that's something that we've been actively pursuing with our dev team. We're just waiting for the right time for them to have a little bit of downtime so we can work on that together. But yeah, we want to get out. So we have an entire page of tokens, and we're going to start with type styles, colors, spacers, and our grids. And we'll build those out as their own page, and we'll identify those as such. And those will have a different sort of adjustment model that we think, or adjustment process, than sort of other components, because there's much bigger ramifications when that goes forward. So it's something that we're investigating right now, and hopefully we'll have it into Shipwright in the near future as a page for tokens, and then maybe a blog post on how we get those integrated.
Yeah, I would also add there's a blog post that I'll drop in the link here on multi-tiered UI kits. So taking that similar approach for tokens, if you had more of a upstream, we used to have it broken out and called them particles rather than tokens, but those would be ingested into your web, mobile, whatever projects you have if you had a marketing site. So you're using a lot of those same values and properties, but in a similar fashion. Let me see one other thing here. I think just more of a comment from Jermid. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. Apologies if I'm not. He just said the team model description is great. They do a similar thing where they have a discovery team working on the additions to the system and a delivery team that actually manages the published libraries. Running a dual track agile model, so delivery team can run on a true agile sprint, whereas the discovery team runs more waterfall. And then when the component's finalized, they pass it into the delivery team, who get it published to the entire design team. So yeah, very, very similar model. I love the idea of splitting them out from a delivery team and like a discovery team. And Jermid is, just for context for folks that are tuning in, managing design system at Morgan Stanley. So appreciate your thoughts there and sharing kind of a little bit of your approach. Any other questions from folks here?
All right, well, that's it. First of all, thank you for watching this and questions. Hope this was insightful, and hope this helped out a little bit. Definitely check out, I would say, if you got time, we have 2 design system talks that would sort of be like, I would say would be the next steps after this. So definitely take some time and take a look at those. Also, those are on our YouTube channel, so feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel for some more UX and UI content. We just, last month, we had a really good talk on data visualization and handling that in Figma and projects. And I know we don't have our next talk aligned yet, but we'll have one up there shortly. If you are interested in giving a talk, we would love to be a platform for you to give a talk. So feel free to reach out either to myself, Jacob, or Andrew. All of our email is just our name at headway.io. So feel free to email us if you're interested.
Awesome.